Oh, and welcome into today's community comment. I am your host, Kevin Haugen. I was not doing my job as host. I was not listening for the cue to send it down here for community comment today. I apologize to our producer today, Jake Hayes, for failing to do my duty on that part. But want to welcome into our studio this morning. Joining us here on community comment today are members of the Beaver Dam Police Department. With us here on Community Comment is Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson and the Chief of Police, John Kreitziger. Thank you both so much for coming on Community Comment today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, we are in to talk about the annual report. That's why the Chief is here. He makes his annual appearance when that report is compiled and done. He checks it off the list. All right, I got on Community Comment. I don't have to worry about it for another year. But we appreciate the Chief and the Lieutenant for coming in on Community Comment today. We'll dive more into that annual report here in just a little bit. But if you have a question for our guests here on Community Comment this morning, you can reach the program at 885-4446 if you want to call in, or you can text 887-9595. Again, if you want to call in, you can reach Community Comment at 885-4446. Or you can text 887-9595 if you have a question for our guests here today with the Beaver Dam Police Department. Fellas, before we dive into that annual report and just sort of highlight one or two very brief things about kind of just what that report it shows from the last year, want to just give a brief update on a really well-known case here in our listening area. We had the lead detective on that case last week, Detective Dan Coons, come on to talk about this case. Again, that is the months-long Amber Alert that was issued in early February, was finally resolved last Wednesday evening, I believe, was when they were spotted near Omaha, Nebraska. Gary Day was taken into custody, and Sophia Franklin is I'm assuming, I don't know where the status is at this point, but hopefully reunited with family at this point, and all is well. But want to give a brief update here with just the court process and proceedings. The individual charged in this case, Gary Day, was in court yesterday. Chief, essentially, what he had done was waived extradition, and I kind of know what that is. I feel like I hopefully explained it all right in the news story we had today. But Chief, you are well more versed in what this stuff means, and I kind of pass it over to you. Essentially, what does that mean in this case?
Well, now he's available to be prosecuted by other agencies. So what it is a lot of prosecutors get together and they decide how this would work and what's the best way this would work. So right when this incident happened, I had called Andrea Will, our district attorney, and talked to her so she could start coordinating this. So she's been working on this since day one, trying to coordinate how this is going to work. So what she does, she reaches out to all the other prosecutors, and they all talk and try and figure out what would be the best way to handle this, how it would make logical sense based on the federal charges, based on the state charges, multiple states, Dodge County charges. Some are felonies, some are misdemeanors, how this would all work. So they kind of work together behind the scenes. We don't really get involved in that. We really aren't part of that. That's between them. I do have an occasional conversation with Andrea once in a while just to see where we're at with that status. She's pretty confident that he's coming back to Wisconsin. She's pretty confident after talking to others that he is going to be back here in Dodge County to face the charges that we have for him, which are 4 charges and they're all felonies. So.
Yeah, it's 4 felony charges that Gary Day is facing in Wisconsin. I believe the other state he's facing charges in is Arkansas. So, and I believe also too on top of that, there's federal charges as well. So that adds to the complexity of which jurisdiction gets their piece here and how this whole process will unfold. Again, that Gary Day waived extradition, which means that that sort of speeds up this court process. A lot of times, Chief, if they don't waive that, does that mean then there's more court proceedings, more court dates that need to be done before he's able to be extradited to other states?
If he would want to contest the extradition, there's court hearings and proceedings that have to happen, which just delays everything. So this does speed it up, makes it quicker, and now he's available versus he's not available till he waives the extradition. And that So that's a good thing.
Yeah, we'll be following this court story closely here on Daily Dodge, and I believe he has another court hearing, if I recall correctly, April 24th. Later this month, I believe, is when Gary Day will be back in a Nebraska County Court, and when things progress locally here, we'll be sure to cover that as well here on 95.3 WBEV and Daily Dodge. But just wanted to provide that update here for our listeners. Again, you can go to dailydodge.com and listen to our interview with the lead detective on that case, Detective Dan Coons. He was very nice and to join us last week on Community Comment and spent an hour discussing his role, what the last couple of months had looked like for the Beaver Dam Police Department, and coordinating with multiple different agencies. It's been a busy couple of months, and
it has. It's so there's a learning curve with this for us. You know, we deal with missing adults and children all the time. Within the city, and usually those are things where, okay, well, we're walking away from home for a little bit, we're spending time with our friends, or we're in another county. We've had kids run off to Milwaukee, where we work with the Milwaukee Police Department, and we get them back with the parents. But this one was completely different, and we did not have enough information to truly know if Sophia was safe, and that's what the family was very concerned about. So we as a police department, and me personally as a police officer, learning how this process works, and it was very new. It may not ever happen in the span of our careers. Hopefully it doesn't, right? I mean, this is...
We never want this to happen.
No, we don't. But we are ready for it a little bit more this time if it ever were to happen again. But yeah, it's a very... It was a labor-intensive process. It was very nice to see how the state of Wisconsin, especially the Department of Justice, sent their agents out. I remember making some phone calls, determining that, yes, this should be an Amber Alert, and probably an hour later, we had 15 to 20 DCI agents in our municipal courts coordinating how we were going to attack this. And it was a very interesting
Coordinating
process.
all of them is a lot, but the next day they had almost 30. So
correct.
That's a lot of work. But when they come in, they each have their assignment. So
and a specialty too.
They know exactly what they got to do and what their job is, and they each do their job. So it worked out really well. But
yeah, I know when we had Detective Dan Coons on, that was one thing that he praised throughout the show, was just the collaborative efforts of all agencies involved on this case,
including the federal guys too.
Yep, including nobody had an ego. Everybody came in, wanted to cooperate with each other, which was great to see. Again, our guests here on a Community Comment this morning are with the Beaver Dam Police Department. To my right is Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson. If you're watching on Daily Dodge TV, that is to his right is the Chief of Police, John Kreitziger. We do have to take a short break. More Community Comment is coming up next.
Haugen.
Welcome back into today's community comment. It is 10:19 on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Our guests here on the program this morning are with the Beaver Dam Police Department. With us are Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson and Police Chief John Kreitziger here on community comment this morning. One more time, if you have a question for our guests, you can call the program at 885-4446. Or you can text 887-9595. If you're watching on Daily Dodge TV on our YouTube channel, you can see the numbers on the bottom left of your screen there. If you want to call in, again, ask a question of our guests here on Community Comment today. But want to spend here this segment of Community Comment, fellas, talking about an annual report that is put together, and I will not explain this. That's why you guys are here. So, Chief, this is sort of your area of expertise. Essentially, what is this report, and how is this put together, and why is it put together every year?
Well, it kind of gives you a guidance. It kind of drives you the future, where we going, where we headed, where do we have some concerns and issues. And it involves the numbers from the numbers that we report every monthly to the FBI, to all the municipal citations, and all the crashes and complaints. So that's all tabulated, so I kind of get an idea when we apply for different grants where we're going to use that money for grants, or when it comes to our budget where we're going to use items or resources out of the budget to try and address some of the concerns that may pop up during an annual report. So basically, we get a monthly tabulation, but this puts all the months together and puts everything together, and then I study it. And then what I usually do is go back 5 or 6 years and do comparisons to see how the trend's going, and try to look for some common themes in the numbers, and try to talk about where the numbers are going and which direction they're headed, and kind of gives you an idea where we're at.
You talk about really the focal point here is the trends and just seeing the changes from year to year. One of the things that we want to highlight here with you guys on Community Comment here with this report is the calls for service that the department has received here. And I feel like your agency, other agencies, whoever we have on, that number isn't going down. It's going the opposite direction.
Yeah, there's two parts of it. The good part is that crime hasn't gone up, but the calls for service in the city of Beaver Dam went up 2,955 calls. That's a lot of calls for service.
And that keeps us busy.
Sure.
And most likely they're not crime related, because the numbers for the crimes aren't going up. So we're either resolving those ahead of time, so there isn't any issues or concerns. We have a lot of people that want to talk to us about different complaints, civil issues and other issues, family issues. All those are part of that. Is probably why that increase is there. But that is a lot of calls for service, and I think that averaged out to like 45 calls a shift or something, and it's a lot of calls.
Yeah, that is a lot of calls, and that's is that Lieutenant and Chief, is that something that do you guys feel that during your shifts? Is obviously you look back and see the final numbers and say, well, yeah, that is a significant change from one year to the next with the amount of calls that you guys were called out to. But on a day-to-day basis, is that something that you guys feel?
You do feel it, yeah. And so you don't feel it every day, but
Sure.
there are certain days where like, oh wow, that was busy, where you have call to call to call. And like the chief said, it's not necessarily a criminality thing, but it's still a call for service. You could show up on scene and you could end up just talking with the people, resolving it. It could be civil matters where you make a couple of phone calls, work things out. It could be handled through a citation. But yeah, it's one of those things where you do feel it, and it does. When you have more calls for service, it takes away the ability for officers to be proactive in the community. So us visiting parks, checking buildings, staying by high crime areas, making traffic stops and trying to slow people down that might be speeding, those sorts of things you notice an impact on the more calls for service you have. We're still doing our job. We're still doing good things in the community, but it's more reactive instead of proactive.
Yeah, and go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, I was just going to say, some of these calls, though, they vary in time length, too. You know, some of these, you're on these calls for hours. We get a normal emergency detention, you're talking anywhere from 8 to 15 hours just to deal with that from start to finish.
Yes.
It's a lot. That's a lot of time for one officer to be involved. So sometimes these calls require 2-3 officers, and it's usually they're not a simple 5-10 minute call. They're usually a minimum of 10 to 15 minutes. And that doesn't include any follow-up that needs to be done. We can maybe take that report in that short of time, but then there's a lot of follow-up by others that need to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we mentioned here that, even though the calls for service has gone up, the crime numbers have stayed steady from one year to the next. So just because you hear that, increase, that 2,000 plus number, you think, oh my goodness, crime is just rampant and out of control. That's not the case.
Right,
It's that has not changed that much, as that's what the report is showing here from last year or 2 years ago to last year.
Yeah, and when you start to look at the numbers, you start to see patterns. Like, for example, we have the top citations that we issued in municipal court, what they are, the number of crashes we have per year, averaged with other years, and then you start to see where is that really what's happening, and what are we doing to try and bring them numbers down, such as accidents. When I first started as chief, we had 488 accidents, and over the last 8 to 10 years, that's down to that 200 range now, 220 to 250, which is more acceptable, I think, than it was before. But it's a lot of people working together. It's engineering and everybody working together to try to bring those numbers down too. So,
on that, a lot of what we see in these annual reports, and if you go to our city website and click on the police department, in the upper left-hand corner, there's a link that says annual reports. So you can read all the annual reports back to 2016 and beyond, and this 2024 report will be on there shortly. But, in the 10 years I've been here at this department, it's different. Things change. Things ebb and flow. You take a look at the accidents, the statistics, even, something as far as criminality and social issues, the types of drugs that people are using have changed.
Sure. Yeah.
Fentanyl is a huge problem. Meth had pretty much been not in our community. Now it is back, where before it was heroin. You take a look at 10 years ago, the use of THC in marijuana and how that has changed and how society's view has changed with it. And you will see that in the statistics of the reports. You talked about city engineering, how we engineer our roads, and that affects where the accidents happen. As if we redo an intersection, we see either up or down. There's talk of, is it roundabouts now? Did I say that? So
they're going to have to do something with the one up there by Menards. That whole
that one, yes, yeah.
That's our number one for the last 5 years. They've redesigned it a couple times already. Just the last couple years that was redesigned. But the large amount of traffic goes through that intersection too. That's why I think they're going to have to look at that and see what they can do.
And that area continues to grow. There's more residential areas behind it. There's more businesses that have been built there. It is a busy intersection.
Yeah, there's new apartments going up right now in the north side of Walmart there.
You mentioned. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's kind of why we do these reports is we go through and oh wow, that's a really high number. Why? Figuring out why and then responding to that appropriately as police officers and as a city. That's why we do these.
Yeah, and it's important to have, like you mentioned, just so important to have these types of documents that you're able to look back on and reflect. Because as you're sitting there throughout the year, these types of trends and statistics don't stand out during the year. You don't really notice things going up. I asked earlier. Obviously, you feel the calls on certain days go up, but certain trends in arrests or certain car accidents, it's tough to really see. I like to use the phrase, the forest through the trees sometimes, and it's hard to really get a full grasp on how bad a certain issue is. So having a report like this to reflect back on and see, all right, this was a problem. How do we address this going into next year is so important for you guys.
And you get grant money. If you use the data-driven numbers to get you grants to be able to work on the data. So
it's very important. Yeah, and one more time before we head to another break here on Community Comment, Lieutenant Johnson, you mentioned where people can go to eventually be able to see this report. You mentioned
all the past ones are on there, and that'll be on there real soon. So
coming up, and it's on the city website.
City website, police department, and then once you get to that police department homepage, it's in the upper left-hand corner. It's the first one on the left. It says annual reports, and it lists them right there. You can download all the way back from 2016.
All right, so almost a full decade's worth of
you bet.
reports that the public can go back and check out, and they can see themselves just how much things change from 1 year to the next. Here on Community Comment today, our members of the Beaver Dam Police Department. With us is Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson and Police Chief John Kreitziger. We do have to take another break. More Community Comment is coming up next.
Are you in an
Well, thank you very much, Jake, and welcome back into our third segment today here on Community Comment. Joining us on the program this morning are with members of the Beaver Dam Police Department. We have with us Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson and Beaver Dam Police Chief John Kreitziger. We have been highlighting the annual Police Department report that had been compiled here not too long ago. It ultimately gets presented to the Police and Fire Commission. Chief, you just did that a couple days ago, essentially give a summarized recap of just some of the specifics and things to note there to the PFC there and the governing body of the Police Department, the Fire Department. So they like to keep up to date with things happening within the agency there. And also, we forgot to mention here on Community Comment that if you are getting a little bogged down by all the stats and numbers, there's something to look at.
It's not just statistics.
Exactly,
there are awesome photographs in here, and I don't know if I can show them up here.
We should have pulled some off before we posted them.
Yeah, just probably I would say about a dozen pages of excellent photographs of community events here.
There you go.
Let's
see,
we got
bit.
National Night Out. All sorts of different stuff in here, and they're good photos. Here's K9 Yeti. He's retiring here, and I was going back into the archives on the police department website here, and the 2016 annual report shows him getting sworn in as a K9. So you can see, throughout the years, all the different photographs and happenings that we have in our community and at the police department. Not just the statistics, but kind of the life. Plus what we deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's something that we talked very briefly about off air, just how much the department has focused over even just the last 10 years here. If you look at just, the couple of pictures that were on that 2016 report to the several pages that we have here today, just how important it is for the department to get out into the community, to be at events, to show your faces and get to know people and for the public to get to know the police department.
Yeah. And see the other side of us.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't want to be always seeing them or be interacting with them when we're on a call, so that's a good thing. Always get out there and be visible.
Agreed. And the number one advantage of having that community service or that community orientated police philosophy is when you already know someone and you have a good relationship with them, when bad things happen, you can work through it a lot easier. Just by going up and I'm telling you, like over the 10 years, I see people on the street, I can wave at them, hey, how's it going? I know that guy, and just that capability of when something bad happens, you gotta say, hey, I have to let you know about this, or hey, we gotta talk about this, and you have that foot in the door to still have a positive interaction with someone.
That's the same philosophy we have with our school resource officer. That's a real goal behind that. There's been other school districts that haven't been able to get that extra school resource officer because they don't understand that the real philosophy for these SROs is to get in there and build relationships. Once they get them relationships, that's where they get the information, and then they can deal with the situation appropriately and easier because they're building those relationships. Yeah, that's why it's the same thing with officers.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, that's why I believe the district has 3 SROs on staff to focus on elementary, middle school, high school here in the Beaver Dam School District, that they can spend their time in those buildings and, like you mentioned, Chief, build connections with students and build those bonds.
It's not just the safety aspect of having an officer in the school. It's the relationships and the community-oriented interactions. So
exactly. That's good to hear. That's great to hear. Again, if you have a question for our guests here on Community Comment, you can call in at 885-4446 or text 887-9595 if you have a question with our guests here today, members of the Beaver Dam Police Department, highlighting an annual report that details some statistics over the course of 2024. Crazy to believe we're already in 2025. I keep wanting to think it's still 2024.
Every time I write a check, I'm still writing 2024.
Yeah, it's been tough for me to transition here from one year to the next, but hopefully I get it here before 2025 is over. But another thing we want to look at here with this report is OWI arrests, and that will also segue us into something recent, Lieutenant, that you had the opportunity to do with the Citizens Academy here at Beaver Dam.
Absolutely. So as I was flipping through the annual report, I noticed that in 2024 we had 15 alcohol-related accidents. So we've had more OWIs than that, but certainly 15 were accidents that had occurred were related to alcohol, where it clearly showed that the person who was causing the accident was under the influence of alcohol or another intoxicant, and how dangerous that can be. So we are lucky to have 15 only accidents. If you take a look at the county statistics, if you look at a bigger city, you look at the state of Wisconsin in general, that percentage can be much higher. So with that said, last night was OWI night at the Citizens Police Academy. And as part of what we do in that community outreach, like the Citizens Police Academy, is we actually have real individuals, previous graduates from our Citizens Police Academy. We had 3 from the 2024 class come in and under very controlled environment. We gave them some alcoholic drinks and put them through the standardized field sobriety test so our 2024 class could observe what we're looking for clues, how we do our OWI investigations, and get a full understanding of really how these things affect impairment and how your ability to drive a motor vehicle is affected. So it's kind of an exciting night. It's a fun night. Obviously, you know, like I said, controlled environment, and things that, but we still have fun and people enjoy it. It's actually one of those.
There's always this old myth that I just had a couple drinks. So
yes,
it's really cool to see this and see how many drinks it takes you to get to point A.
Yes, and it's funny you mentioned the couple drinks because as they drank on, I'd continually ask them, how many drinks did you have tonight? And I'm looking at 6, like, okay, you're there, and how many do you have? Oh, just a couple. I'm like, that's not a couple. That's 3 times more than a couple. You know what I mean? And that's part of it, and continue on. I didn't mean to interrupt, but okay, all right. So
it's such an important part of educating the public about where their limits are,
correct,
how much they can take with hitting that .08 legal limit there, and I'm sure it was very difficult to try to persuade people to come in and drink alcohol.
So honestly, it's not. I figured it was sarcasm there, but sometimes it is. Sometimes I mean, there's some people that are a little like, you tell them like, all right, we're gonna have you drink this alcohol. I'm gonna be your bartender. I'm gonna cut you off at a certain point because you're done at that point, and because we don't want people getting out of control.
Right,
we want to get them to that legal limit and slightly over, and to show the impairment, nothing more. But you have to tell them like you're gonna go through these standardized field sobriety tests about 2 or 3 times in front of a group of people, and you're gonna be off balance. You might be falling over a little bit and slurring your speech, and you have to be okay with that. It might be a little bit embarrassing, but we had 3 excellent volunteers. They were troopers. They were fantastic last night.
Do you guys still use, I just thought of this now, do you guys still use, I know that you were able to have people actually consume alcohol, which is the best way to give this example, but
the most realistic, that's for sure.
There's those beer goggles.
The beer goggles.
Is that something that or is it not really a good representation of what people feel or feel like or look like?
So the beer goggles, I've actually used those myself, and they mess with your depth perception where you just can't walk. Okay. We don't have a set of those at the Beaver Dam Police Department, but I have seen those before, seen them used. It will give the appearance to the person wearing them what it's like to be impaired, and you'll see if you're watching somebody wear them, you'll see them stumble around and stuff like that. But it's just not the same.
It's not authentic.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
sure.
exactly. It's the same thing of like if you were to put on a set of headphones and you were listening to your own voice, but it was a half second behind, and it would mess with how you talk. You know what I mean? Because you're listening to your own voice, it messes with the words come out. Same thing. You put these beer goggles on, your depth perception is off. You're looking for your foot to go one place. You're expecting it to land, and it does not land where you thought it was going to land. So it's the same thing. But yeah, alcohol's a little different. One of the tests that we do is called the HGN, horizontal gaze nystagmus. And no matter what you do, you can't fake this one. You can make nystagmus in different ways, but alcohol will always, and I believe, I want to say 92% of all studies, that when you get to a certain alcohol amount, those individuals will have certain clues in their eyes in the nystagmus. What it is a choppiness and a lack of smooth pursuit as you track objects. So as you're driving, as you're holding onto the wheel and looking at things and looking at road signs and people crossing the road and other cars, when you're completely sober, your eyes very smoothly track that object as it goes. But as you drink alcohol, your eyes become choppy. So rather than that very smooth pursuit of that object, you start seeing boop, boop, boom, and
And that's the goal of the police academy. We could sit here and talk and have a lecture up front of these people
Right.
all day
Sure,
long and tell
yeah.
them
Yep,
this stuff.
exactly.
Until they actually see it and someone's part of it and someone else can ask someone else rather than the police, how do you feel? How do you
Yeah.
think you did? Well, and you witness this
Yep.
and it's all hands-on. That's the best way. And I think that
100%.
makes the best impression or effect on these people. So they
For
really
our citizens to be
understand.
able to look over the shoulder of an officer as they're moving the stimulus and they see the choppiness in the eyes, indicating that these people, while they're driving their car, aren't tracking objects. You know what I mean? Like it causes a delay in processing.
Yeah, as a visual learner, I can tell you that is important to really grasp and get the full picture of what the police department is trying to get
Correct.
to let the public know how important it is.
learn.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's very important. And again, our guests here on Community Comment today are with the Beaver Dam Police Department. We have to take another break. More Community Comment is coming up next.
Are you
It is 10:50 on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Welcome back into our final segment of Community Comment. Today with us on our program are members of the Beaver Dam Police Department. We have Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson and Beaver Dam Police Chief John Kreitziger on our program this morning. Before we went to break, we were talking about OWIs and just kind of some of the things that the police department shows at the Citizens Academy, that they teach the public about what they look for, what they spot for during traffic stops. And we could probably make a whole show out of talking about OWIs and all these specifics.
We could, really, if you wanted to, we could talk for weeks yes, if you really wanted to. But yeah, it's OWIs and kind of the culture of the state of Wisconsin is kind of in conflict, and I just wanted to point one thing out, and I really noticed it last night, and the ladies who volunteered to be our test subjects or victims, depending on how you look at them. Sure. I'm just kidding. But who are our test subjects for our standardized field sobriety tests, they exhibited three. I just wanted to take a moment to point out that although the legal limit in the state of Wisconsin is .08, when officers are doing the standardized field sobriety test, they're not looking for the statutory .08. They're looking for impairment. So what might be a .08 for you, me, or the chief feels very different and will manifest itself in our behavior differently, and like I said, every person's different. Every person digests liquor and alcohol in their system a little bit differently. It's how much they weigh, how much they've had to eat, how often they drink, how their liver is able to process it through the blood, et cetera. So we had three different examples. We had one individual who, as they drank, they just went straight up with their BAC because we stop and we check to see where they're at, to make sure we're not overdoing it or underdoing it. We just want to make sure that they get to a certain level, move on, and you could see that her level of impairment matched with what she was giving us on the PBT. We had another individual who presented as a lot more intoxicated than they really were as far as their PBT was concerned. So if, for instance, she did the standardized field sobriety test, which she did, she failed them because we saw the clues in the eyes where she had a level of impairment that she could not safely operate a motor vehicle. And by her own admission, she goes, "There's no way I'd be driving. There's just no way I couldn't handle it." Yeah. And then you give her the PBT, and she was slightly under the legal limit. So there's two individuals there that are completely different. And we had a third individual who I swear to God was completely sober, and she was right at the legal limit. And it just all depends on who you are, your makeup, and that individual as well, although she presented to us as completely sober, she goes, "There's no way I drive a car." She said, "I don't feel safe driving a car." And she knew it. So, and that's what I wanted to discuss is just as far as, people out there just to understand that when you have a couple drinks, when you're buzzed, okay, when you're feeling that, that means that you are impaired at some level, okay? The question is how much. Don't take the risk, play it safe, get a designated driver, get a safe ride home, call an Uber, call a taxi, walk. Do all these different things rather than get behind the wheel, and thank God we only have 15 alcohol-related accidents out there. Those are the ones that we know of. There could have been more. There were probably so many other drunk drivers that didn't get into an accident, but the more you tempt fate, the more you play with fire, the more you say, "You know what, I'll be home in just a little bit." It's just a couple blocks away, the more likely you are to get in an accident and have some very serious consequences with that. So I just wanted to say, just like even though the .08 in the state of Wisconsin is the statutory BAC, the blood alcohol content that is illegal, you can still be impaired whether or not you're at that level. It's about each individual person and their level of impairment, how they can handle themselves behind the wheel. So if you're feeling it, that is that impairment creeping up on you. Yeah. So play it safe.
We all joke that everybody holds their liquor differently,
and
but there's a lot of truth to that.
It is.
You provided three perfect examples of how certain amounts of alcohol impact each person differently. That one person can feel completely fine, but be at or above that legal limit, and then people who look like they are impaired beyond the ability to walk straight. They are maybe a little bit below that legal limit, and it's also an important distinction to note too that it isn't just that .08 that all right, if you are there or not there, all right, you're free to get back on the road and drive home. You mentioned it's impairment. It's the ability. Can you drive safely on the road and not put anybody else in danger that officers are looking for when they're doing these tests on the side of the road.
And we always use you around that .03, .04. We don't let them drive.
Right. Yeah. As a matter of safety. Guidance, even though we may not choose to arrest that driver who is not over the legal limit, or they had a couple of clues that they were impaired, but not failing those tests, we would still say, all right, give me your keys. you're done driving for 12 hours, call a designated driver to come pick you up, and we would stay on scene and make sure that they do get a safe ride home or that they walk away from that traffic stop and don't come back. So, I mean, we make those decisions as police officers to keep them safe and everybody else on the road safe as well. So
important information. Again, a good promotion, I would say, for the Beaver Dam Police Department Citizens Academy. That if anybody out there hasn't had an opportunity to take part in that course, obviously this year's program is already underway.
Correct.
So that goes through May or early June.
First week of June is the last class.
First week of June is the last class, but. We do a great job, I think, here on our program of highlighting when the sign-ups are for next year. So
we have 12 seats available for next year.
It's a lot of fun, and it costs you nothing, just your time.
Yeah. If you want to apply, we'll take the applications and I will hold them until we start really pushing for recruitment. But if you want to apply now, we'll take your application and hold on to it, and I'll start giving you a call in February next year.
Right. Do people stop by the police department or contact you, Lieutenant, to get that application?
Yep. Go to the front window of the police department, ask for an application. We'll get one for you. Otherwise, you can call us or you can email me. My email is jjohnson. That's jjohnson @bdpd.org, as in Beaver Dam Police Department.org, or you can give us a call, 920-887-4612. Once again, 920-887-4612.
And on that note, I want to thank our guests here for coming on Community Comment today. Members of the Beaver Dam Police Department with us on Community Comment this morning. Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson and Police Chief John Kreitziger. Thank you both so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
And that will do it for today's Community Comment.